Welcome to Nightfall Narrative, where we explore true stories that feel like fiction. We're so glad you're here. The story begins with the words that sealed an 8-year journey. A groom looks at his bride and says, "And so, after 2,920 days of knowing you, of loving you in secret and then out loud, of waiting and hoping and building this life in my head today, that life begins." His bride, Sarah, echoes the sentiment of a long-awaited dream come true. They say good things come to those who wait. I don't think they knew it could be asterisk this good. For every awkward laugh, for every mile that separated us, for every moment I spent wondering, it all led to you. It was always leading to you. Hearing those vows back, it still feels a little surreal to them. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but at the same time, it feels like a lifetime. In a way, it was a whole lifetime before their new one started. It took them 8 years to get from their first awkward conversation to that moment. 8 years. 2,920 days, to be exact. This is the story of how a secret crush on a best friend finally led to a wedding day, 20 days later. It's a story about patience, about really bad timing, and about how the best things in life sometimes take a very, very long time to get right. It all started at a classic college party. It was the first month of sophomore year, at one of those packed, sweaty, music is too loud to think kind of parties. Tom did not want to be there. A total homebody with a paper he should have been writing, he was literally dragged out by his roommate. And thank God he was. He saw Sarah from across the room. Sarah remembers the party, but honestly doesn't remember seeing him at first. She was with her friends, trying to navigate a sea of people to get a drink. The music was vibrating through the floor, and she felt completely out of her element in a cheap floral dress she'd bought on sale. Tom, however, was captivated. He saw her laughing at something her friend said, and the way she tilted her head back just stopped him in his tracks. He was an awkward, lanky 19-year-old with absolutely zero game. His whole plan was to just stand there and hopefully make eye contact. As Sarah made her way through the crowd, she stumbled, bumping right into someone. She turned around to apologize, and there he was. This was Tom's moment, his one shot. His brain was screaming, "Say something cool, say something witty." So he looked at the beautiful girl he'd been staring at for 10 minutes, and what came out of his mouth was, "You have very effective momentum." He said it with such seriousness that Sarah just stared at him, completely confused. Thinking it might be some physics joke she wasn't smart enough to get, she just went, "Oh, thanks, I think." It was awful, the worst possible thing he could have said. Tom immediately started stammering, trying to backtrack, feeling his face get hotter and hotter. He wanted the floor to swallow him whole, picturing her walking away to tell her friends about the weirdest guy she'd ever met. But it was actually charming, in a deeply, deeply awkward way. He was so flustered and genuine. He wasn't trying to be smooth. He was just a real person who had short-circuited in a social situation, something she could relate to on a spiritual level. So she laughed, a real laugh this time, and introduced herself. He told her he was Tom. They ended up talking for almost an hour, pushed up against a wall while the party raged around them. They talked about their majors, the professors they hated, and the terrible cafeteria food. After that catastrophic opening line, talking to her felt like the most natural thing in the world. He learned she was a literature major from a small town 3 states away, with an incredibly nerdy passion for old black and white movies. She learned he was studying engineering, which explained the momentum comment a little bit. He was funny and a really good listener who actually seemed to care about the answers, a rare thing at a party like that. But for her, it just felt like making a new kind of dorky friend. She had no idea what was going on in his head. In his head, he was completely 100% smitten. A full-blown, movie-style crush from that first conversation. When he got back to his dorm that night, his roommate asked if it was worth it. Tom just said, "Yeah, it was." The secret crush had officially begun, and he had no idea it would stay a secret for the next 3 years. After that party, Tom just sort of blended into Sarah's life. A coincidental shared class the next semester led to study sessions, which turned into grabbing lunch, and soon enough, he was an essential part of her friend group. He became her go-to person. He had executed a flawless, long-term infiltration, which landed him squarely in the friend zone. But he didn't care. He was just happy to be in her orbit. Those first few years were a masterclass in pining, filled with memories of being good old Tom, the reliable one. He was the most reliable person she had ever met. When her car broke down 2 hours from campus, the first person she called was Tom. He didn't hesitate, just said, "Send me your location, I'm on my way," bringing snacks and a playlist for the drive. Tom remembers that drive so clearly. She was so stressed out, but he was just happy because he was the person she called. He was the one who got to ride in and save the day. It remains one of his favorite memories, even though she spent at least an hour of it complaining about a guy she had just gone on a date with. That's the cringy part for Sarah to look back on. She dated other people and would tell Tom everything, dissecting dates and texts and asking for his advice. She'd ask, "What does it mean when he texts this?" Or, "Do you think he's serious?" And Tom, with his heart in a blender, would give her honest, thoughtful advice, saying things like, "Well, it sounds like he's really into you." Every word was like a tiny paper cut on his soul. Once, when she was heartbroken after being ghosted, she came to his place with a pint of ice cream. They sat on his lumpy futon and watched Casablanca while she cried. He just patted her back, thinking, "I'm right here. I wouldn't ghost you. I would build you a house out of post-it notes if you asked me to." But he didn't say any of it. He just passed her the tissues. And she had no clue. To her, he was her best friend, her rock. He helped her move into her first off-campus apartment, assembling a ridiculously complicated IKEA bookshelf in exchange for pizza. They had so many inside jokes. They could have entire conversations in public that nobody else would get. The foundation of their friendship was so solid that the idea of it being anything else never crossed her mind. It crossed his mind every single day. Every laugh, every accidental brush of hands, every moment was charged for him. His friends knew. His roommate used to say, "Dude, you have to tell her. This is painful to watch." But he was terrified. Her friendship meant more than anything, and the idea of ruining it was a risk he couldn't take. Looking back, Sarah can see the signs. The way he'd look at her a second too long or remember insignificant things she'd told him months earlier. But at the time, she just thought he was an incredibly good friend, putting him on a pedestal of platonic perfection. He was Tom. He was safe. He was so deep in the friend zone that he was practically the mayor. As graduation got closer, panic set in. The shared world they lived in was about to close. It felt like now or never. But he was still a coward, figuring his secret would just fade away into a quiet, lifelong regret. He had no idea that something else was about to change everything first. It was the winter of their senior year. Sarah had a massive research paper, her entire grade for a literature seminar, due in 2 days when her laptop completely died. Blue screen of death. Tom got a call from her, and she was in a full-blown panic. She'd lost at least half her work, and all of her notes and sources were on that hard drive. She had called him just to vent, not expecting him to actually do anything. Tom was across campus in a review session for one of his own engineering finals. Hearing the panic in her voice, something snapped. All the passive waiting evaporated. She needed him. He stood up in the middle of the lecture hall, packed his bag, and walked out, texting her, "Don't move. I'm coming to you. We're going to fix this." He showed up minutes later, took her dead laptop, and laid out a plan with the focus of a general. "I'm taking this back to my place. I have the tools to pull the hard drive. You are going to stay here and start rewriting everything you can remember. I will work on data recovery. We'll do this all night if we have to." Tom spent the next 6 hours hunched over her laptop, carefully dismantling it and running recovery software. His final was the next day, and he hadn't studied at all. But all that mattered was getting her paper back. While he was gone, something shifted for Sarah. It wasn't just asterisk that he was helping, it was asterisk how. He dropped everything, took charge, and offered a solution, not just sympathy. Then she remembered a friend mentioning setting Tom up with her cousin. Sarah had felt a strange, visceral reaction at the time, a sharp pang she'd dismissed as protectiveness. But sitting there in that sterile computer lab, she was finally honest with herself. It was jealousy. The thought of Tom with someone else, of someone else getting that unwavering focus, made her stomach clench. Around 2 a.m., Tom got it. The software worked. He recovered the file and sprinted back to the library, where he found her asleep with her head on a keyboard. She woke up to him gently shaking her shoulder. He looked eggs. Austed but was smiling, holding up a flash drive like it was the Holy Grail. "I got it. It's all here." She burst into tears, not of panic, but of overwhelming gratitude and something new and terrifying and exciting. She threw her arms around him, right there in the middle of the silent library. He hugged her, and it was different. It wasn't one of their usual friendly hugs. She held on. In that moment, the fear was gone. He whispered, "I would do anything for you, Sarah. You know that, right?" She pulled back and looked at him. For the first time, she really saw asterisk him past the best friend label. She saw the guy who said she had effective momentum, who drove hours to help with her car, who had just sacrificed his own grades for hers. She finally understood the look that had been in his eyes all along. It was love. He was in love with her. And the most terrifying, earth-shattering realization was that she was in love with him, too. It had been growing under the surface for years. A friendship so deep she hadn't recognized it blossoming into more. They stood there in silence, and then, after 3 years, everything changed. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to back away. She didn't. She met him halfway. Their first kiss wasn't a party kiss. It was quiet, gentle, and it felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "So, I guess I should have done that a while ago." She laughed, that same laugh from the first night he met her. "Yeah, Tom, you really should have." What an incredible turning point. After 3 years of waiting, the secret is finally out. Before we see how they handled this new chapter, if you're enjoying their story, please consider subscribing to Nightfall Narrative. We love sharing these kinds of journeys, and we wouldn't want you to miss what's next. Now, back to Tom and Sarah. That kiss should have been the fairy tale ending, but their story has never been that simple. The next few months were a beautiful, weird adjustment. They had to relearn their dynamic, shifting from best friends to a couple. But the foundation was incredible. They were just building a new house on top of it. They had a blissful 3 months before graduation, but they both knew there was a ticking clock. Months earlier, Tom had accepted a dream job offer in California. Sarah had been accepted into a master's program at their university in Boston. After 3 years in the friend zone and 3 months together, they now faced a 3,000-mile separation. It felt like a cruel joke. Breaking up was never on the table. They had waited too long to let it go. Naively, Tom thought, "We survived the friend zone. How hard can a little distance be?" It was unbelievably hard. The first few months were brutal. Sarah was surrounded by their old memories, but he was gone. The time difference was a killer. Missed calls and inadequate texts led to frustration. They had their first real fights over the phone, usually born from miscommunication or jealousy. One night, after a terrible fight over something stupid, Sarah sat on her bed and cried, feeling hopeless. The beautiful thing they had just found felt stretched to its breaking point. But they knew they were fighters. They realized trying wasn't enough. They had to be intentional. They made rules, scheduled video call dates twice a week, no distractions. They started sending care packages, little tangible pieces of each other's worlds. They watched movies together by pressing play at the same second while on the phone, creating shared experiences. It required immense trust and learning to communicate their insecurities instead of letting them fester. The visits were everything. The agonizing wait at the airport arrival's gate would disappear the moment she saw him walking towards her, and for a weekend, everything was perfect. But the goodbyes at the security gate were physically painful. Those 2 years felt like a decade, but they got through it. They learned how to love each other through a screen and be a team from opposite sides of the country. Weirdly, the distance solidified them, burning away the trivial stuff. It proved that what they had was real and strong enough to survive a continent between them. As Sarah's master's program ended, they knew it was time to close the gap for good. After getting her master's, Sarah did the scariest and most exciting thing she'd ever done. She bought a one-way ticket to California. She had no job and no friends there besides Tom. All she had was an unshakable faith in them. Picking her up from the airport that day, knowing she wasn't leaving, was one of the top 5 days of Tom's life. The long-distance chapter was over. They got a small apartment, which brought another adjustment period. They had to learn each other's rhythms. She leaves tea bags on the counter. He can't sleep unless the closet door is shut. It was domestic, mundane, and absolutely wonderful. They spent about a year just being together, building their life. Tom would watch her reading a book and be overwhelmed with a feeling of profound rightness. The wait, the friendship, the distance, it had all been a test, and they had passed. He knew it was time. Sarah had no idea. They had talked about marriage as a someday thing. She was just enjoying the now. Tom started planning a proposal that was special but personal, reflecting their quiet story. He decided to take it back to the beginning, not the party, but the beginning of *us*. One Friday, Sarah came home exhausted from her new job at a local library. On the counter was a note: "Put on something comfortable and meet me where it all began." Not the party, the paper. Tom had found a quiet university library nearby and was waiting at a secluded table, tucked between shelves of old books. He was more nervous than he had ever been, the ring in his pocket feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Sarah knew immediately what he meant. Her heart started beating fast. She drove to the address he'd texted her. Walking into the beautiful, old library, she saw him in the back, looking just as nervous and hopeful as he did all those years ago. When she reached the table, he stood up. The words he had practiced vanished. He took both of her hands and said, "Sarah, we started here, in a place just like this. You were panicked, and I was just a guy who was desperately in love with you and wanted to fix your problems. For years, I was just your friend, and I would have been your friend forever if that's all I could have. But you let me be more." Her eyes were already filling with tears. Then we were separated by 3,000 miles, and we learned to love each other through the phone. We have waited, we've been patient, and we have fought for this. You are my best friend, and you are the love of my life. I have been waiting for this moment since I was 19 years old. I don't want to wait anymore. And that's when he got down on one knee. He pulled out a beautiful, simple ring. It was perfect. He looked up at her and asked, "Sarah, will you marry me?" She couldn't speak. She just nodded, crying, and finally managed to whisper, "Yes, of course, yes." He stood up and put the ring on her finger. It was the same feeling as their first kiss, like coming home. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place after 7 long years. The next year was a whirlwind of joyful, stress-free wedding planning. After everything they'd been through, arguing about flower arrangements felt like a victory lap. They knew they wanted the wedding to be a celebration of their journey, decorating a table with photos from every stage, from a goofy college picture to a screenshot of a long-distance video call. The wedding day itself, the 2,920th day since that party, felt like a dream. The waiting was over. All the anxiety and uncertainty were in the past. Today was the destination. They decided to do a first look before the ceremony. As Sarah walked up behind Tom, her heart pounded. She took a deep breath and tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around and all the air left his lungs. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. All he could say was, "Wow, hi." It was that same feeling from the party 8 years ago of being completely stopped in his tracks by her. But this time, she was walking towards him, not away. The ceremony was emotional. They wrote their own vows. Sarah mentioned his effective momentum, opening line, and everyone laughed. She talked about the foundation of friendship and how falling in love with her best friend was the greatest gift of her life. Tom talked about the wait. He looked at her and said, "For 2919 days, I have loved you. Some of those days, it was a secret, a quiet hope I kept to myself. Some of those days, it was from 3,000 miles away, a love that lived in phone calls and text messages. But on every single one of those days, you were my person. And now, on the 2,920th day, I get to call you my wife. It was worth every second of the wait." Standing there, holding hands and saying, "I do," was the culmination of everything. Every challenge, every tear, every mile, it all made sense. It wasn't a detour. It was their long, winding, 8-year path. The rest of the day was a blur of joy, dancing, and celebrating with everyone they loved. It was perfect. So that's their story. Their journey taught them that sometimes the greatest things in life require an almost impossible amount of patience. If Tom had rushed it before Sarah was ready, he might have scared her away and lost his best friend forever. It also taught them that the best foundation for love is a deep, unshakable friendship. They knew each other's flaws, fears, and weird quirks long before they ever fell in love. There were no masks or games. That's a gift. Theirs isn't a fairy tale of love at first sight. It's a story of love built over time, brick by brick, through awkwardness, friendship, distance, and an asterisk lot of patience. It's a real-life love story. And they wouldn't trade a single day of that 29-20-day wait. Every moment led them here. So if you're out there, maybe you're stuck in the friend zone, or in a long-distance relationship, or you just feel like you've been waiting forever for your person, please don't lose hope. Sometimes, the best stories have the longest first chapters. Thank you so much for joining us at Nightfall Narrative to hear this story. We would absolutely love to hear about your own love stories in the comments below. What part of our story surprised you the most? If you enjoyed this story and want more real-life narratives, we'd love for you to subscribe to Nightfall Narrative and become a part of our community. We're really just getting started.